This man is one of the most powerful kings of his age, and one of Christianity's most legendary crusaders. Now, however, he is merely a prisoner. He's at the mercy of his enemies.
It's a fall from power into darkness.
It was the most significant blackmail affair of the Middle Ages, and half of Europe was affected.
I'd say there was too much testosterone involved.
King Richard fears for his crown. He must regain his freedom at any price. It is the greatest scandal of the Middle Ages. A king cast into a dungeon by a lowly duke.
Leopold of Austria. You're a crusader like me. Why are you doing this?
Can you not think of the answer?
The glory and suffering of Richard the Lionheart. It is a story that continues to resonate and fascinate. Although Richard is King of England, the Lionheart affair begins in Normandy. King Richard of the House of Plantagenet gathers his divided family around him. He has recently been crowned King of England. Richard now plans to embark on a crusade to the Holy Land. It's a risky undertaking.
John, Count of Mortain, come forth.
His younger brother John also has his heart set on the English throne.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Swear on the Bible that you will remain faithful. And swear, too, that until the day I am back, you will not enter the Kingdom of England.
You would banish me from England? Never! I'm a prince. Why do I not rule Anjou? Or Aquitaine? Or Brittany? Or Normandy?
Because our father said it is so. And you are obviously still a child. John.
Swear it. Now.
Why should I agree to this?
Because I say so.
John is just the first in a long line of enemies that Richard will make in the months to come. There's just one person he can trust. She's perhaps the most influential woman of the time, his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine. In the summer of 1190, Richard I embarks on his crusade. He claims to be motivated by a love of God rather than a thirst for power and the spoils of war. His fleet initially lands in Sicily, where he spends the winter. Richard's men are eager for battle, and the king fans the flames.
What an army this is that follows the cross to the east, so different in languages and customs, yet passionately united. United in God's name!
4 years before, Sultan Saladin's Muslim troops had reconquered Jerusalem, thereby provoking this third crusade.
May this army return victorious. May it restore the former extent and glory of the Holy Land.
Knights like Richard's loyal friend Baldwin of Bethune are prepared to risk everything for the church.
Peace? No. Never. Peace? Never.
Richard, too, is fully committed.
I will never bend. Never bow. Never!
If you were going to be a good war leader, this was the place to do it. If you wanted to have a heroic reputation, what could make more sense than to take the cross and to lead Christian armies in the Holy Land.
Reclaiming Jerusalem is an ambition shared by kings and rulers, irrespective of their differences at home in Europe. As a result, the French king, Philip II, also leads an army to the Holy Land. Philip and Richard have known each other all their lives and grew up as friends. As kings, the close friends become bitter enemies. This is due to the complex, intertwined history of their families. Richard's family, the House of Plantagenet, is the most powerful dynasty in Western Europe and sovereign in England. On the European mainland, however, their Angevin empire makes them vassals of the French kings. For generations, the Kingdom of France has been ruled by the House of Capet. King Philip II is nominally Richard's overlord. However, the Capetians have much less land and therefore much less money. As a result, Philip comes to see his former friend Richard as a dangerous enemy.
Compared to the Plantagenets, the Capetians had less territory and less military might. This led to political imbalance because the vassal actually had dominion over his sovereign.
Matrimony is to bring the two houses closer together. But Richard repeatedly postpones his long-planned marriage to Philip's sister, Alix.
This is Excalibur. This is the sword that King Arthur wielded. It will assist me in killing my enemies. Oh, Philip, have you prayed for our victory?
We have much to lose.
I can only prevail. Should I die, I enter heaven. Should I win, eternal glory will be my legacy.
A son is a legacy, Richard. You must marry Alix before you make her a widow and make use of the wedding night.
Alix can wait until I return.
If you spurn Alix now and marry another woman, I will be your enemy for as long as I live.
Everyone knows that Alix had an affair with my father and a bastard was born. A bastard! Everyone knows this, don't they? And I should marry this woman? Never.
A scandal ensues. Richard cancels the planned marriage and adds another enemy to a growing list.
This was probably one of the greatest humiliations of Philip Augustus's life. He is also furious because he feels Richard has manipulated him. He senses that Richard has always had the upper hand. Richard's superiority extends to the battlefield. He has more money and more soldiers, and is also far braver. There is a long list of humiliations that reinforce Philip's hatred of the vassal he feels must be removed.
Instead of Alix, Richard marries Berengaria, the daughter of the King of Navarre, thereby cementing an alliance against the Capetians.
Onwards!
Finally, Richard is ready to launch his assault on the Holy Land. In early summer of 1191, King Richard reaches Acre. Crusaders from other countries have been laying siege to the harbour town for 2 years. Richard's arrival marks a turning point.
Attack!
3 days later, led by Richard, the Christian troops overrun the fortress. It is the first great victory for Richard the Lionheart.
The conquest of Acre was largely due to the strength of the army Richard the Lionheart brought with him. Rather than the presence of the French king and his soldiers, the deciding factor was the support Richard provided for the troops laying siege to the town.
But another crusader demands his share of the glory. After the recent death of Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa, the Austrian Duke Leopold V considers himself the Holy Roman Empire's representative in the region. He plays little role in the victory in Acre, and yet he claims credit.
Neither Richard nor Philip had any interest in allowing another flag to wave above Acre, as they would have had to share the spoils of victory. In addition, neither was prepared to accept a lowly duke placing himself on the same level as two kings.
Richard refuses to have the triumph of Acre taken away from him. His reaction is anything but diplomatic. At the time, casting a duke's standards into the dirt is considered an incredible affront to his honor. Whether the offense is intentional or accidental, the Austrian duke immediately becomes Richard's adversary.
You cannot ever have imagined a world in which this little Duke of Austria would one day be in a position to exact revenge. But that's the way God works.
After the conquest of Acre, King Philip soon returns home. Richard, however, continues on to Jerusalem. Over the course of a few months, Richard and his men enjoy one victory after another in Haifa, Caesarea, Capernaum, and Jaffa. When the ransom for 2,700 Muslim prisoners is not paid on time, Richard has them executed on the spot. The massacre remains a painful memory across the Arab world to this day.
Even Richard's contemporaries considered his actions extraordinary. They are a stain on Richard's reputation and on his crusade, and were undoubtedly calculated to instill fear and horror.
Richard's troops and Sultan Saladin's men have been fighting for over a year, before the two commanders finally face each other in person for the first and only time near Jaffa.
Signal the attack now!
When Saladin's men see Richard on the battlefield, their courage deserts them. Both Christian and Muslim chroniclers agree. The victory at Jaffa is the result of Richard's fearsome reputation.
He's just a man.
That's his most outstanding act of charismatic military leadership, I suppose, the recapture of Jaffa. It was probably this act of daring that led very soon afterwards to chroniclers baptizing him as Lionheart.
This ideal of a king who fights with the heart of a lion will ring throughout centuries to come. During World War II, a German bomb lands next to the British Parliament, damaging the statue of Richard the Lionheart. The statue's sword bends but does not break. To the English, it is a symbol of their country's strength and resilience. The crusade eventually comes to an end when a compromise is reached with Saladin. Jerusalem remains under Muslim control, but Christians are given access to the holy sites. In October of 1192, Richard and his men are ready to return home. But they face difficulties. Muslim Moors lie in wait off Gibraltar. In southern France, a hostile count could prove dangerous, and the high alpine passes are already buried under snow. Richard decides to take the route he considers the safest, across the Adriatic Sea and through the foothills of the Alps and Austria.
The men are freezing and hungry.
Despite being a crusader king, Richard decides to travel in disguise. Does he perhaps suspect something?
With God's help, in 2 weeks we will be home again.
I just wish that we didn't have to rely on his help so often.
Richard has already lost men to 2 surprise attacks during the journey.
Go and change this. We need local money. But be careful.
Somebody is hunting the English king, Richard the Lionheart. But who is it?
One could say that Richard had managed to alienate everybody, including the French king and the Duke of Austria. He had many enemies following his successful crusade, and it's likely that he suspected what awaited him. Something unpleasant.
The search for records of the events of the time leads to Richard's birthplace, Oxford, England. The Bodleian Library contains almost 12 million books, including some of the world's rarest manuscripts. John Gillingham, Britain's leading expert on Richard the Lionheart, considers one of these manuscripts the most important source of information about the king. Manuscript 582 was written by the chronicler Roger of Howden. The parchment is more than 800 years old. Howden accompanied Richard during the Crusade and was a member of his inner circle. John Gillingham therefore believes that Howden's chronicle of the greatest disaster in the king's life is largely accurate.
Here in red, De Captione Ricardi Regis Angliae, concerning the capture of Richard, King of England. Proferens die ac nocte venet prope vienam. The king fell asleep at once. Meanwhile, his attendant, who was trying to change money, was recognized by a servant of the Duke of Austria, and he was captured and led before the Duke of Austria, and he showed them the lodging where Richard was.
My lord! Thank you, my friend.
Richard's disguise has not saved him. The King of England, the most successful crusader of his age, finds himself trapped.
The news spread like wildfire through Europe, and it turned the political map of Europe upside down.
Capturing a king, particularly one returning from a crusade, is considered an outrage and could result in excommunication.
Leopold of Austria.
Anyone willing to face such consequences must have his reasons.
I see you have settled in comfortably. As befits your character, I believe.
Leopold of Austria. Why are you doing this? You are a crusader like me.
Can you not think of the answer? And now, your sword, please.
1.5 years after his humiliation at Acre, the Duke is finally able to take revenge.
Es ist ein relativ typischer Zug für die Adligen.
It was typical for noblemen at the time to react sensitively to any perceived slight to their status, and the Duke was no exception. Indeed, nobody ever accused him of overreacting by taking Richard prisoner. His contemporaries could fully understand his actions.
Beobachtern der damaligen Zeit ganz ohne weiteres nachvollziehbar ist.
It is a spectacular fall from grace, from the throne of England and the glory and triumph of the Crusade to the humiliation of captivity. Taking adversaries as hostages for financial or political gain is a popular tactic of the age. However, the capture of a crusader king is unparalleled. Richard himself knows that there will be a heavy price to pay for his freedom. Money is just one issue. Richard's captivity threatens his entire reign, and therefore his existence.
It gave the King of France an unequaled opportunity to invade and dismember the Angevin dominions. It gave Richard's younger brother John the chance to grab the throne he had long desired. Everything that people seemed to know about the way that Europe was turned on its head, and no one could foresee what would happen next.
During the winter of 1192, Richard considers his predicament in Dürnstein Castle, high above the Danube in Lower Austria. It is the first prison of many. Dürnstein is now one of Austria's most popular tourist destinations. Many come because of Richard the Lionheart and the legend of Blondel the minstrel. It is said that this troubadour went from castle to castle looking for the captive king. Wherever he went, he would sing a particular song. At Dürnstein, Richard finally responded. The myth of Blondel is just that, a myth, as are the tales of Richard's dark, dank dungeon. Endangering the life of the most valuable hostage of medieval times by placing him in a cold, damp cell would have been nothing less than negligent.
A blessed Christmas, Your Highness.
Baldwin, what a pleasure.
It seems the Duke holds a grudge.
Yes, but he's not a fool. If he wanted satisfaction, a good old duel could have been arranged at once, and his honor been restored, if he'd won.
As you said, he's no fool.
For sure. Sit down. In fact, the question is, why would a mere duke from the end of the world risk excommunication by the Pope by capturing a crusader And not just any crusader.
Because he's greedy?
That I'm sure of.
Because he thinks nobody will notice? He's protected.
Exactly. Someone is protecting him.
There is only one ruler powerful enough to take a crusader prisoner and risk the wrath of the Pope: the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI of Hohenstaufen. Henry is considered sly, ambitious, and ruthless.
Heinrich VI. Ist in dem Bewusstsein groß geworden.
Henry VI grew up in the belief that he was more important than anyone else. That changes a person. He appears to have been somewhat cruel, although one does have to take the veracity of the sources for this information into account. Many of these accusations come from adversaries, particularly from the region of southern Italy.
Und sie stammen vor allem aus dem süditalienischen Umfeld.
Henry has spent several years attempting to conquer the Kingdom of Sicily. Richard the Lionheart supports the emperor's Sicilian opponents. And there are other reasons Henry VI considers the English king an enemy.
We humans are miserable hunters. We're unable to run fast, smell or see well, and flying is beyond us. We're terribly weak.
Following a disastrous attempt to conquer Sicily in 1191, Henry finds himself facing a serious threat at home. Several powerful German princes begin to revolt against the emperor. The opposition is led by the House of Welf, Richard's allies and relatives. If Henry were able to remove Richard the Lionheart from the equation, his problems would be significantly reduced.
But God has given us great intelligence. This compensates for our weaknesses. No?
The year before Richard's capture, Emperor Henry and France's King Philip had met in Milan.
And we have trusted companions that find the prey for us and capture it. No?
The subject of the meeting, Richard the Lionheart, and possible alliances to remove him from power.
Well done.
Your Highness. From the Duke of Austria.
Word of Richard's capture comes at the perfect time for Henry.
Bring him to me.
He secured the support of the French king in accordance with the old adage that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It was a win-win situation for the French king and Henry, and of course for Leopold. And it was just bad luck for Richard.
Just days after Richard is captured, Henry sends a letter to King Philip in Paris, in which he proudly reports having imprisoned the enemy of our empire. Diplomatic channels carry the disastrous news to London, where Richard's return has been eagerly awaited. Emissaries are dispatched to Germany to negotiate a price for Richard's release. Duke Leopold of Austria initially refuses to surrender Richard to his king and emperor. He haggles for 3 months, and Henry VI eventually agrees to pay him 1/2 of the expected ransom. Only then does the Duke hand Richard over.
Leopold V was extremely stubborn and must have infuriated Henry VI. But Henry was unable to simply overrule Leopold because Leopold was one of the few noblemen in the empire he could rely on for support.
Richard's fate is to be decided in the imperial city of Speyer. the envoy, Bishop Hubert Walter, brings disturbing news from England. Richard's brother John is laying claim to the throne and has made a pact with the French king.
John, you foolish child.
Your subjects love you. Listen to me, they love you, not John.
This is not about John. This is about the man who has tempted him, the Frenchman. I will never submit. Never. I would rather die.
Was there no wine when I require it?
Out.
Out!
During this period, he had absolutely no idea what the future had in store for him. When would he be released? Would he be released at all? It must have been a very difficult situation for Richard to be in, psychologically.
In Speyer, Richard is finally able to take matters into his own hands, to some extent. He has to defend himself in a show trial set up by the emperor.
Henry accuses him of being an enemy of the empire in an attempt to legitimize the capture of the crusader king. That is the whole point of the performance in Speyer.
Henry VI raises a number of serious allegations, accusing Richard of having made a pact against him in Sicily, insulted his relative Leopold, and, above all, betrayed the Holy Land by agreeing to a compromise with Saladin. German records of the time are remarkably quiet about the trial itself. Fortunately, however, Roger of Howden records Richard's reaction in his chronicles.
The king most freely and boldly and with constancy replies, so effectively that not only does the emperor pardon him, but he praises him. This must have been an enormous setback for Emperor Henry VI. If he was to hold a crusader king in prison, that king must have done things wrong. If the king, through his eloquence, has been able to persuade the court that he had done nothing wrong, then what was the emperor to do? How could he keep such a man prisoner for any longer?
Richard Plantagenet, you will now honor the Emperor.
Emperor Henry simply changes his approach. As nobles and bishops look on, the emperor bestows the kiss of peace on the man who he had, until then, accused of being an enemy of the empire. Nonetheless, Henry still demands payment.
Well, now that we are united in friendship, allow me to make a promise to you before all these honorable men. I will not rest until friendship and peace exist. Also between you and Philip, the King of France.
The emperor promises that he will make peace between the King of England and the King of France. Well, we know he has written to the King of France. He has no intention of doing that. But he says he will make peace, and in return for the work of reconciling, there is a small fee to be paid.
Until then, dear friend, you will continue to enjoy my hospitality.
Is it a ransom or a commission? Either way, Richard is to pay Henry 100,000 silver marks, voluntarily, of course.
One could say that the whole episode was deeply embarrassing for the emperor, and yet he somehow managed to continue to pursue his goals. Henry insisted on keeping the English king in captivity, despite the fact that he was clearly violating the code of honor of the age.
Instead of being released, Richard is now placed in a real dungeon. Trifels Castle, west of Speyer, is considered the House of Hohenstaufen state prison. Compared to Dürnstein, it's a maximum security facility.
The imprisonment in Trifels is also a performance, designed to convey the urgency of the situation to Richard's subjects. Hurry up, I need the money. Conditions in captivity are unbearable. I have to get out of here, or my life is in danger.
The Trifels period is the darkest of Richard's captivity. While imprisoned here, he discovers that King Philip has attacked his dominions in Normandy. With no way to respond, Richard turns to music for consolation. Music also provides an opportunity for Richard to communicate with the outside world. The lyrics and melodies of two songs by Richard, one of them written in captivity, have survived.
Janu, Janu, ons prise ne dira sa raison. Janu, ons prise ne dira sa raison.
Richard's composition, as performed by the music scholar Michael Kort.
Doch immer noch bin ich gefangen. Ja, das ist gut.
The captive king uses his song to exert pressure on his subjects.
Honten avronce por mare non son, suis estes ivers
Richard makes use of the fastest and most influential medium of the time, troubadours, traveling singers.
Que je n'avoyais si pauvre compagnon, je ne laissasse pour avoir en prison.
Within a short time, the pop stars of the Middle Ages carry Richard's request for ransom money across his territories.
Doch immer noch bin ich gefangen.
In 1193, what was probably the greatest fundraising effort of medieval times begins. Anything and everything is collected: wool from monasteries, precious stones, jewelry and gold and silver from churches. High taxes are introduced. The chronicler Ralph of Coggeshall writes that no king had ever demanded more of his subjects than Richard the Lionheart.
He wants us to record exactly what each nobleman contributes.
The bishop and crusader Hubert Walter sets about implementing Richard's demands without hesitation.
That we may know to what extent we owe the people our gratitude.
Richard's mother, Eleanor, plays a crucial role.
Go to John. Nottingham Castle and Tick Hill remain his. Windsor, Wallingford, and the Peak are ours.
She was one of the most impressive women of the Middle Ages. She had a lot of power, and she was not afraid to use it.
We must sacrifice Hubert.
Yes.
All of us.
Raising 100,000 silver marks, more than $2 billion in modern money, is a monumental task. Richard's officials create a system that remains in use for more than 700 years. The pipe rolls are the longest uninterrupted record of taxes and public expenditure in England. Tally sticks, standardized notched pieces of wood, are used as proof of payment.
In this section here, you can actually see the individuals being taxed to pay for that ransom. So you've got Richard Bassett, for example, who's paying £15, and you've got Richard Fallio, who's paying £14 and 15 shillings. And there would have been lots of these sections throughout the roll, so lots of individuals paying money into the exchequer. And when people paid money into the exchequer, they could receive a tally stick as proof of what they'd deposited. These are essentially receipts which formed from one bit of wood on which notches are made. So these are individual notches for £20. It's the size of one little finger. This is 20, 40, 60, 80, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, £7. So £87 from John de Cormail, who's a sheriff. And it's a really simple but really effective system because with the wood, the grain is always going to be the same, so you can always match it up and make sure that there's no possibility of fraud. So it's a really simple way of transferring credit around the country.
Nobles and commoners alike are compelled to contribute, and yet there is very little resistance.
As far as we can tell, people thought that for the king who had led the Christian cause against Saladin, we ought to put hands in our pockets.
The greatest threat to Richard remains Philip of France, who conquers more and more of Richard's territories. In April of 1193, Gisors, Richard's most important stronghold in Normandy, surrenders without resistance.
Several lords defect and join Philip Augustus. As far as they are concerned, it makes sense to support the ruler who is most likely to emerge victorious. This is a common occurrence, particularly among nobles in border regions.
Even though he is given greater freedom, Richard is desperate. Henry maintains his grip on him by threatening an alliance with Philip of France.
Without a doubt, Richard's greatest fear was of being handed over to the French king. Henry certainly blackmailed him with this possibility.
Richard's only hope is diplomacy. In order to gain the emperor's favor, he acts as an intermediary between Henry and the rebellious nobles along the Rhine. Richard's negotiations are successful, and Henry agrees to set final conditions for his release. These include even more money. Roger of Howden meticulously records the details of the deal.
The king will also give another 50,000 marks of silver to the emperor and to the Duke of Austria, and must give hostages for that same amount. So it seems that now Richard has to pay 150,000 marks. Not so long ago, it was only 100,000. It's exasperating, frightening almost, and yet it brings at last hope that truly, within a short period of time, once his people have erased this huge king's ransom, he will, at last, be free.
5 months later, Richard's travails would appear to be over. As agreed, Eleanor delivers 2/3 of the ransom to Germany. 16 tons of silver, of a total of 23 tons.
Have you prayed to God every day, Richard?
Not every day, but more fervently as time has passed.
Eleanor also brings good news. John's uprising has failed.
I thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank your loyal subjects. They have made many sacrifices.
Without a doubt, Richard's mother, Eleanor, was responsible for maintaining Richard's rule. Although the woman is almost 70 years old, she acts as her son's representative with an authority that serves to keep things relatively peaceful.
Richard is to be released in mid-January of 1194. He has been imprisoned for more than a year.
Vienna's wine is good, they say.
Baldwin will remain a hostage at Leopold's court in Austria.
Seek out a wife for me for my return.
Is that what you want?
My lord, the Emperor summons you.
Once again, events take a turn for the worse.
No. No.
Read. Loudly and clearly.
Richard's prospective release has been called off. King Philip of France and Richard's brother John have made the Emperor a tempting offer.
100,000 marks in silver if I remain a captive for another year. Or 150,000 if I am delivered to Philip.
Never! That is abhorrent!
We, who presume to rule, must sometimes take the abhorrent into consideration, no? For the good of the realm.
What do you want?
It must have been unbelievably annoying that this emperor could be such a shit as to do these things. But what could he do? Well, one of the things we know he did was that he did homage to the emperor.
We remain friends. You receive England as a fiefdom from us, and pay me £5,000 per year. No?
That makes me your vassal.
But you would also be a free man, Richard. Trust me, I know what it means to be imprisoned.
In fact, King Richard's vassalage would be limited. Once again, the Emperor wants money and a grand gesture. The proud King Richard the Lionheart is to bend his knee to the Emperor.
Sources from the time record that his mother really had to convince him to do this. It would not have been easy for him. He would have had to grit his teeth and exercise the utmost restraint to perform this act.
After more than 13 months of captivity, Richard the Lionheart finally regains his freedom. It is the end of one of the greatest political scandals of the age. Richard forgives his brother John for his betrayal and wages war on his former childhood friend, King Philip of France. Just a few months after his release, Richard is more powerful than ever before.
I mean, it is the most remarkable thing that ever happened, possibly in the whole of European history, that a head of state should be kidnapped by another head of state, should be held in prison for over a year, and should recover from that.
These events have consequences throughout Europe. Leopold V of Austria uses the money he receives to modernize his duchy. He dies the same year after falling from his horse. The Pope only revokes his excommunication as Leopold lies on his deathbed. Henry VI uses Richard's ransom to conquer Sicily. He dies 3 years later. Richard's nephew becomes his successor. King Philip of France survives Richard by 24 years and lays the foundation for the French nation. And what remains of Richard the Lionheart?
To me, what remains is an impressive story about a ruler of the Middle Ages who acted in a very European manner.
At just 41 years of age, Richard the Lionheart is killed by a bolt fired from an enemy's crossbow. He leaves no legitimate heirs. Under the rule of Richard's brother John, the Angevin Empire collapses within a few years. Richard's greatest legacy remains his fame.